Intermountain Budge ENT Clinic has an experienced and caring team of physicians and staff to assist you with all of your ear, nose, and throat concerns, including head and neck surgery. Doctors Kaiser and Wilson and their staff at Intermountain Budge ENT Clinic will work together to provide excellent care and support throughout the entire surgery process, from your pre-op visit to your full recovery. And they accept all insurance. For more information about Doctors Kaiser or Wilson, search Budge Clinic ENT or call 435-716-1420. Local care with Intermountain expertise.
From your first sunrise to the sunset of life, we are with you through life's journey. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. Visit socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
If you really want to support our troops, donate today at USO.org.
It's time for the Garden Guide with your host, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden.
New research suggests that people are more likely to eat vegetables if they have a tempting name.
What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
From gardening to landscaping.
Today we are going to try and create garden eyebrows. Kind of like the flowers are sprouting directly from your hair. That makes sense.
Go! Phone lines are open at 753-KVNU or 800-369-KVNU.
Kind of like eating vegetables.
It's the Garden Guide, now on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to a hazy Saturday morning. It's not very often we have to say that, but we'll still take the sunshine that we are going to be getting today because we've been looking forward to this weekend for a long time, Mark.
For a long time, absolutely. And it's kind of odd in May to have haze rolling in from Canada.
No.
So, hopefully the wind will blow and it'll just kind of push this out. So
yeah.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, air quality-wise, we're right now yellow, according to the Utah Department of Environmental Quality. So not quite into that unhealthy range. But, yesterday it just started to come in and just kind of stuck with us all afternoon. But today, looking at temperatures to be in the low 80s, and I know last night, my wife and I, we were talking, we were going to finally get the lawn taken care of and mowed up, and we've been holding off and waiting. And I thought, you know what, if it's going to be a nice night, let's just do it last night.
Tonight,
yeah. So fired up the lawnmower and took care of the lawn, and it was just great. Just nice
to be
and
outside.
cool.
The temperature was great. Yeah, temperature was great.
Great night.
So I lost, unfortunately, both my hives of bees over the winter, and so I got some new colonies yesterday. Didn't expect I didn't know they were coming, and so they just showed up. And so last night I hurried and ran home and got my hives ready to go to get them installed, and it got dark by the time I was able to go grab them, and so today. Gonna happen today, but It was nice. It was really nice being out last night. It was cool, and got some stuff done. So it's great. Weather's been amazing, and a lot of exciting things happening at Anderson's this weekend. As usual, we've got compost tea brewing like crazy. We are starting to run out of our 2.5 gallon containers. Got lots of ones, but 2.5s are disappearing. So if you want to grab those last few 2.5s, today's going to be your day.
Last day.
I think they'll be gone by the end of the day. And we occasionally can kind of repurpose, recycle some throughout the season. So I might have a few here and there after today. But if you want 2.5 gallons of the compost tea, you better grab them today.
Okay.
Gallons, I've got plenty. I've still got quite a few of those, but the 2.5s are going to disappear. And then the last couple of days, we have just gotten truck after truck after truck of product in. So we've got some gorgeous shrubs. I just got in some beautiful green giant arborvitae that are taller than I am.
Oh, wow.
And they're beautiful. Yeah, great price on those. And just a lot of really nice flowering shrubs. We got some beautiful Ito peonies in, and I think most of those are gone already because they were so pretty, and so everybody grabbed those. But lots and lots of really nice shrubs, and we've been unloading truck after truck of flowers and vegetables as well too. So the greenhouses are full of flowers and vegetables, and we're adding to the mix every single day, it seems like. So if you come in and we're out of a certain type of tomato that you're looking for, a specific pepper, or special artificial kind of petunia, we'll probably have it back in. And so we're just burning through plants really quickly right now, but we're restocking. So what's in the greenhouse is not limited to the only thing that we're going to have. Yeah. Because a lot of people will come in, they're like, oh, you don't have this. And it's like, I'll just come in like day after tomorrow and I'll probably have it back in stock again because we had it yesterday, And so it's an ongoing process. We're consistently bringing in new plants. So lots of new vegetables. So squashes, melons, cucumbers. I just looked at the 10-day forecast, and through Memorial Day, I don't see any frost. I don't see any frost in the forecast. We've got maybe a little thunder shower coming through here and there, which is really nice, and it looks like it's going to cool things off again next week. So
hopefully
low 70s for a couple days next week. Can't beat that. And our rivers are roaring, but they're not overflowing right now, except for in those big open floodplains. So that's a great scenario for water for this year. Yeah. I'm just not seeing Logan River pouring over the banks at the moment.
Yeah,
that could change. But we get 70s again next week, and it just is going to keep it full, but not into the flood zone. So that's really great.
I was down out on a run a couple of times this week, out towards the southwest side of Logan, and right there as the river kind of makes its way through the farm fields. Earlier this week, it had turned those fields just into a lake.
And water like
then
crazy.
Yesterday, as I was out there again, I'm like, hey, the water's gone down.
A little bit, yeah. So good to replenish our groundwater. Mm-hmm. So that's happening, and we've had some flooding throughout the valley, so we don't want to discount that. There's definitely been some flooding throughout the valley, but not nearly as much as we could have
seen.
Yeah, we could have seen a lot. So the next couple weeks will really tell us what's happening with Logan, because there's a lot of snow up there to melt. I saw some pictures of Tony Grove from like a week ago, and the snow is still over the restroom. At Tony Grove.
You wonder if that campground's even going to open this year.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. So compost tea happening. We've got some gorgeous plants that came in. Weather has switched, and we've got some great weather. And it does not appear that we've got frost. I'm not counting it out yet, though. Full moon is, I think, the 4th of June. So if we're going to get frost in the next 2 weeks, it's going to be that's going to be the 4th of June. So kind of keep an eye on that and watch for that. But as of right now, through the end of May, at least Memorial Day, we're not seeing any chances for frost. So that means we can get our tomatoes and our peppers planted, and our squashes and melons and cucumbers. And generally our last frost is around the 20th of May, and that's today.
Yeah.
That's today. So we're kind of at that point where let's shift gears, and it's time to plant corn, and it's time to plant beans, and time to get tomatoes out there. And I still haven't got one thing planted in my garden yet. I got my onions ready to go like last week, and just like one distraction after the next, and it's like, oh, maybe Friday night I'll be able to do it. And then the bees showed up, and it's just like, oh my gosh, dang it. And after I got home at 7:00, it's like, okay, I got it now. I was out there just like, getting my beehives ready, and then it's like, all right, maybe I better eat tonight.
Finish it off.
So it didn't get completely done.
And I think a lot of people are kind of assessing what the winter did to their yard, because we're seeing some weird things just in our yard. Like, for example, our roses my wife had planted last year, we thought that we'd lost them.
Yeah.
I mean, we just went and looked, and they just were black as black.
Yeah.
And we trimmed them all down, started putting a little rose food on them, water on them, and this week just starting to see the sprouts come back up.
That's good.
Told her, hey, look, you know what? They're there. Our peach tree is another weird one. Peach tree just is not wanting to come out. Apple trees have just exploded.
Right.
Apricot tree was a little behind. Peach tree is just like, I'm good. I'm really not going to take.
Hopefully still alive. Mine have leafed out, but I don't have hardly any blossoms on my peaches or my nectarines, which is like really disappointing. But the trees look really great. My apples are in absolute full bloom. Mm-hmm. Just like absolute full bloom. And I fertilized them well last year in hopes that we'd get some really good production, because last year they didn't produce a whole lot, but I think we had some frost damage on the blossoms. No frost damage on the blossoms this year, so
far.
We're going to have to be thinning because they are absolutely loaded with flowers, and the pears are as well too. So the pears and the apples have come through the winter really well. Apricots, not as many blossoms. Peaches and nectarines, not as many blossoms. But my cherries did amazing. It's like the cherries were just like absolutely covered as well too. So it's like, go figure. But with the roses, and my wife and I talked about this the other day. She's like, "Hey, you need to talk about this on the radio." So this is probably where we can start off. And you are welcome to join our conversation at any time. We've got phone lines open, 753-5868, 753-KVNU, or 1-800-369-5868. Call in with questions or comments. We'd love to have you join us on the show. But with the roses, we have seen a lot of dieback. So really a lot of dieback. And a lot of the canes are black. They're black way down on the canes. But if there's any green left on the canes, that's a great sign. So prune off all the black down to the green canes, even if you have to just leave an inch of cane left. But anything that's coming up from below the graft, where those canes are grafted onto that hardier rootstock, anything that's coming up from below that is not going to be the same rose. And so it's going to be something different, because they will take the hardier rootstocks of the roses and they will graft the more desirable, more beautiful roses into that rootstock. And so what's below that graft is going to be something completely different. And so, prune as severely as necessary, leave as much green as you've got left there. And hopefully that green is above the graft. If it's below the graft and you've got like shoots coming up from below the ground, it's going to be a different rose. It's going to be something else. So it'll look like a little bit of a wild rose. The flowers will be single. They won't be double. They'll usually be pink or they'll be red, which are still really pretty. But it's a hardier rootstock that they've used to adapt that more beautiful, that more desirable rose into a harsher environment, so it will survive through the winters. Because you get a winter like the one that we had, where we had so much snow on the ground, we had at least a week and a half of well below zero temperatures.
Very cold.
I mean, we had some 20 belows there for a while that froze pipes and really caused a lot of problems for people. And it did some damage. So it killed one of my magnolia trees, and a bunch of my mom's roses. We're just going to have to yank probably 4 or 5 of those out, which is about half. She probably lost about half of them. And the other ones are looking okay. We got to do a little severe pruning, but they'll be all right.
Well, for ours, we went all the way down to about a inch and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that far. There was just barely some green.
Right.
About an inch and a half above ground. And so we scalped it.
Yep. And the way the winter hit early last year, I mean, like snows came really early. A lot of gardeners couldn't mulch their roses and get them protected because the weather just changed overnight. Yeah. So a lot of plants didn't get their usual mulch and protection because of the way winter hit. Then it just never left for 6 months, and those super sub-zero temperatures were just really damaging for a lot of trees. So with your roses, just be consistent with the fertilizer. Would not hurt to hit them with like some kangaroo roots or some boomerang to try and really get some extra growth going. Yeah, yep. And then fertilize monthly. Fertilize monthly on the roses, and every time they bloom, prune very severely. So when they bloom, we usually go back 4 or 5 leaflets. Usually is about 5 leaflet leaves is where we prune back to, take those spent flowers off, or cut them when they're just starting to bloom so you can bring them inside and enjoy them, and then fertilize every month, and those roses will take off and go like crazy again. So what's interesting is when there's damage on trees or there's damage on roses or shrubs like this, and you prune all that damaged growth out, what happens is your root system is still large enough to support a much bigger plant, and so you'll get a lot of extra growth that comes off of those plants that you've had to prune severely, because the root system's bigger and healthier and more able to sustain a much larger plant, so it will produce a lot of growth. It will fill in some of those spots. So it's usually what happens when we get a snowstorm and we get snow on the leaves of trees that are just starting to leaf out, either in the spring or trees that still have leaves in the fall, and we'll have broken branches and lots of breakage, and got to get in there and do some pruning. And then all it takes is like a year to 2 years, and all of a sudden the trees have just like grown right back again and filled in the spots where you had some damage. So it's surprising how quickly those trees and shrubs and roses and other plants can recover after some damage, because they've got good, hardy, strong root systems. So it's all good. All right. Looks like we've got a couple calls.
We do. And so let's start off with Kristen, who is joining us on the line from Preston. Kristen, welcome to the Garden Guide on this Saturday morning.
Thank you for taking my call. Mark, I have almost a dozen dwarf mugal pines. I have 8 in my backyard and 3 in the front yard. They have hardly any green needles left on them, and they look like they are dead.
Yes.
Do you think they winter killed?
The deer ate them.
Under 50?
Yes, I've everybody who has pines this year, they have just munched them to pieces, and they were protected through most of the winter. And I've got a similar situation at my mom's house. So she had a gorgeous blue Scotch pine that's only like 12 inches tall or less, and it looked great last fall, and it got covered with snow, and it was covered with snow all year. And I went and I looked at it the other night, and there's not a single needle left on it. Nothing. Yeah, there's just sticks, and the deer have come through, and they've been hungry because there was so much snow, and they have consumed the pines to the point where there's nothing left. Had, like, I would say more than a handful of customers in yesterday with the exact same problem, and we discussed this. Pines will produce new needles, and so they'll send out new needles, but it takes usually 2 to 3 years for them to produce a whole set of needles. And so I would definitely go in there and do a little bit of trimming and fixing if there's a little bit of damage that happened. If you've got some broken pieces, just kind of trim those up, and then fertilize them. And I would use something probably liquid. So like, again, the kangaroo roots or the boomerang would be great. And you could mix like a tree and shrub food in with that, more of a granule fertilizer to feed them for the whole summer. Let's try and encourage some growth. And by fall, you'll probably have most of the needles back, and then by next year, you'll probably get all of them back again if we can keep the deer from nibbling on them. But it's not just you, Kristen. It's like everybody. Yeah, everybody's pines. They're like sticks. They just look like sticks.
Yeah. It's so sad.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's a highlight of our landscape.
I know. It's so disappointing. So just be aware, you're not the only one that has pine sticks in their yard.
Okay.
Everybody does.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I wish I had a better answer for you, but a little bit of encouragement for some new growth, and it's going to take this year and next for them to recover completely.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're so welcome.
Well, and that kind of leads into a discussion that one of our other callers just wasn't able to hang on the line with us, and she was wondering, what do you do to treat winter damage? Because we are seeing, as we were talking about, a lot of winter damage from just the snow, the cold temperatures that we had, and how that's impacting our trees. You don't want to just yank it out yet.
No.
But how do you assess whether or not it's going to be able to be salvageable?
So on evergreens that the deer haven't consumed, because the pines they've nibbled on, they've eaten a lot of spruce, they have absolutely devoured the arborvitae. A lot of times they will just put new growth back out. So I have 3 arborvitae in front of my house. The deer just munch those down every year, but then by the middle of summer, they're just like, they just grow right back, and they look great. And so we don't worry about those too much. But like I've explained to Kristen, with the other ones that they are eating, it's going to take some time, and they're going to look like sticks, but they're going to kick all new growth out. Then, in fact, there's probably buds on there already that are ready to open up. But those pines, they just look like a whole bunch of sticks sticking out of the ground because they've just eaten every needle right off of them. For the plants that the deer haven't consumed, we've seen a lot of scalding on boxwoods and also on yews and a lot of the evergreens that the deer just won't eat. And those can just be sheared. And so we'll get our head shears out, and we'll just shear those and trim those back. And there's some products you can apply to them in the fall so that they won't scald and have that winter damage. So if you use a product like a Wilt Proof, or I think it's the other one's called Moisture In, and you can apply that to your plants in the late fall so that they don't transpire and respire all that moisture out through the winter time. So even though the ground's frozen, they can pick up a little bit of moisture, but not a lot because the ground is frozen. But they will lose a lot of moisture through the needles between sunlight and wind and everything that happens. And so they're still losing moisture through those needles when it's really windy and dry. And so they will start to dry out. Those needles will dry out, or those broadleaf evergreens like boxwoods, they'll start to scald a little bit. And so you just shear those and feed them, and all new growth comes right back out. With a lot of shrubs and trees, we've seen snow piled on top of shrubs. There's some broken branches. We've seen real cold damage to less hardy shrubs and trees. Like we've seen people that have lost weigela and lost roses and lost other plants that are hardy for our area. But when we get that kind of cold for so long, it can really make it. Yeah, it can really do some damage. And so at that point, you want to go in there and prune out anything that's damaged or broken. And we've seen a lot of that, snow falling off the roof onto the shrubs on the side of the house. It's
breaking branches.
Breaking branches. Yeah, I had a gentleman in, and he had some gorgeous, just really nice looking boxwoods, and he'd treated them to make sure they didn't scald. And he had one section that just was just yellow. And it wasn't like a iron deficient yellow. It just looked like it was dead yellow. And he's like, I treated these, and I don't know. I don't understand why there's like this sun scald damage on the backside of the plants, because that's the north side and they look really great on the south side. And I'm like, you got a broken branch. And he's like, no, it's great. It's like, yeah, it's like right by your house. The snow probably came off and it broke those. And he's like, well, when I did my snow blower, I'd just kind of make sure and get the snow off. I was like, yep, I did that too, but I still have some broken branches. And then so it's like, you just got to get in there and prune that out. You're going to have like a bite taken out of your shrubs for this year, but it'll just grow right back in. And so, yeah, you just got to get in there with a pruner and just take some of that damaged stuff out, some of that broken stuff out, and then make sure and feed your plants. Use a tree and shrub food. Like Fertilum makes a really great tree and shrub food. One application will last for up to 4 months. And so you do it now. It's going to get June, July, August, September. Done. You don't have to fertilize them again. It's like the one application will last the entire summer, and it's just a great way to have a little bit of nutrient out there just to feed them all summer long to encourage some new growth. And with the roses, we want to feed those a lot more consistently because they bloom where the new growth is. So we want to feed. But on like your regular shrubs and your regular trees, prune out all that damage. Prune out anything that looks like it's just had some real harsh weather conditions that have damaged it back and it's not leafing out. Prune a little bit more severely than you would normally, and then feed them. Make sure and feed them. And we've had great moisture for since last fall. So really great soil moisture since last fall. So they've gotten plenty of water. I haven't even watered any of my trees in my yard yet. I had to water the lawn this week.
Finally.
It was getting kind of dry. Yeah, I was getting kind of dry. I had to water the lawn this week, but really haven't done anything with the trees and shrubs yet. And so good soil moisture for those. Continue to make sure they get watered, every week to 2 weeks. They don't need to be watered every day. Every week to 2 weeks, and it will be great. But get that fertilizer out there to encourage some new growth.
Okay.
Yeah, so good questions.
Another question that came in and wasn't able to stay on the line is a lot of people are finally getting into their flower beds that have been buried in, foots of snowdrifts.
Yes.
And they're finding the soil is compacted, it's clay.
Right.
What's the best way to be able to try to bring those flower beds out of of the winter
out of the winter
that we've had?
And when you have 5 feet of snow on stuff, it really the weight just does compact the soil down like crazy. And so and a lot of mulches. I had another customer in yesterday. We were talking about they're starting to landscape their house. So they just built a new house. They're starting to landscape their house. They want to put down a lot of weed barrier. They want to do some gravel. And I encourage them not to do just gravel mulch everywhere because it starts to get monotonous. It's do some gravel over here, do some bark over here, do some different textures so that your yard doesn't just look like gravel all over the place, because we don't want just gravel all over, and a lot of different plants. But we talked about how weed barrier and mulch really work, and there's so many times where I go to people's homes and they have weed barrier down and they have mulch on top of it, and they've got a drip system in, which is what you should do. But their drip system is running as many times as their sprinklers are for their lawns, and so we'll dig down through the weed barrier and the mulch and find that there's just like mud underneath there, and it's because they're getting watered like way too much, and then your plants start to struggle, and you think they're not getting enough water because they're starting to wilt, and it's not because they're not getting enough water, it's because they've got too much water. They're like drowning in it. And so consulted with them and talked about, hey, if you don't put the weed barrier down, that's okay, but make sure you get that 2 or 3 inches of mulch, and your plants will not need to be watered as much. So we discussed them setting their sprinklers to water maybe like once every 7 to 10 days in their flower beds, and not in their flower beds, but in their shrub plantings. They'll have to water a little bit more in the flower beds because the flowers' root systems aren't as big. But and then have their lawn go twice a week instead of the 3 times a week, and then their landscape's going to do just so much better because they're not overwatering. So it's critical that you make sure that your sprinkler zones are set up so that the shrubs aren't getting the same amount of water that the lawn is, because the lawn's going to need a little bit more frequently because the root system's shallow, and your flower beds are going to need a little bit more. But when it comes to your planting areas, you got to cut that back, and if you've got like perennials, and going back to your question, if you've got perennials in there, it's hard to incorporate a nice mulch into the soil if it's really compacted down without damaging your perennials. Mm-hmm. And so we'll usually say, okay, let's mulch in around those perennials. One, it's going to save water, it's going to keep the soil cooler, your plants are going to perform really well, and you can just kind of like rake the soil and kind of break it up, and then put like a soil building conditioner or the Garden Max, or there's a whole bunch of different mulches that you can put in there that are going to put nutrient back into the soil. They're going to help condition the soil so the water penetrates better. If it's compacted, it's going to break up that clay, and it's going to do all those other great things like holding moisture and cooling the plants down, and doing a lot of things like that as well too. So without tilling it, which you can till some of the flower beds, which is great. You can get out there and turn that soil over, add a little bit of compost to it. And I talked to the director of the water treatment facility here in Logan, and they are composting the biosolids in with the wood, like the green waste now. And he said they've been testing it, and it's coming out, and it's got great source of nitrogen, it's got phosphorus, it's got all kinds of great stuff in there. So they are starting to turn out much nicer compost at the landfill. So if you want to use that compost, it's inexpensive. I think it's like $15 a yard. Don't hold me to it, I haven't asked specifically, but it's usually around $15 or $20 a yard. And they are turning out some nitrogen enriched compost now, which will be wonderful for yards, and it's really quite inexpensive. We like the soil building conditioner. It's a finely ground redwood bark. It's been composted with poultry manure and bat guano and worm castings and kelp meal, and that's just a really nice mulch to put in around your plants. But it will get down into the soil. It'll break up that clay and really condition the soil that's maybe been compacted over the winter. Yeah.
Something we found, just adding some compost, and this year we mixed in a lot of iron sulfate, putting that around our raspberries because you can't till those up. No. And this year, in fact, I specifically went a little heavy on the iron sulfate. Yeah. A little more than I probably should, but it had paid off.
It makes a big difference.
Our raspberries have never looked this good. So
the early moisture has not hurt. I have talked to a lot of people who their raspberries really got beat up, though. With all that snow, a lot of breakage. But you prune those a little bit more severely, and then you fertilize them, and they just grow right back. So they're doing really well. I've got 5 of my raspberries. I planted like 10 last year. I got 5 that are looking really good, and 5 that just aren't. Nothing happening.
Still coming.
So I got to plant some new raspberries. Darn it!
Great way to add some compost with that, some iron sulfate, some fertilizer, and it takes right off.
Away you go. Yep.
All right, well, we're heading to the bottom of the hour. We'll get our news and weather break here coming up, and we can take more of your calls for the Garden Guide, 753-5868, and we'll be right back here on KVNU.
Pine Peel
Bill Walter, KVNU News. The Utah Board of Higher Education selected Elizabeth Betsy R. Cantwell as the 17th president of Utah State University on Friday afternoon, following an extensive national search. Cantwell will assume the position later this summer. She succeeds Noel Cockett, who served as president from January 2017 to May 2023. The Utah Board of Higher Education named a 19-member search committee, including a variety of community members and stakeholders, back in December. Cantwell was one of 3 finalists announced on May 1st. Cantwell is currently Senior Vice President for Research and Innovation at the University of Arizona. She is responsible for an $825 million annual research portfolio, and her responsibilities include the 1,268-acre UA Tech Park. Best-selling novelist James Patterson is teaming up with investigative journalist Vicki Ward on a book about the 2022 killing of 4 University of Idaho students. Little Brown and Company announced Friday that Patterson and Ward will draw from dozens of exclusive interviews, extensive on-the-ground reporting, copious court transcripts, and their own planned attendance at the trial of Brian Kohberger, who was indicted this week by a grand jury in Boise. Kohberger is accused of killing Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves at a rental home in Moscow, Idaho, near the University of Idaho campus. Hazy sunshine during the day, warm temperatures around 80. Over the weekend, lows at night, upper 40s to near 50. You can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com.
From ABC Sports, I'm Mike Dubosky. The Heat took both games on the road against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, holding off Boston last night, led by another resilient performance from Jimmy Butler.
Crossover dribble to his right hand, drives right baseline, falling away. Again, Butler nails it.
The call on ESPN, Butler had 27 points as the Heat win 111-105. They head back to Miami for Game 3 on Sunday. In the Stanley Cup playoffs, after a marathon 4-overtime Game 1 win for the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Stars and Golden Knights would start their series in the West Finals. The game was decided in overtime.
Shanked at the right side by Howden. Rebound side of the goal. They have scored. Howden did bank it home. Vegas wins in overtime.
KKGK with the call on Brett Howden's winner, 4-3, the final Game 2 on Sunday. This is ABC Sports.
The Garden Guide on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
And welcome back. KVNU News Time, 8:37, with some hazy skies on this Saturday morning. We'll feel right along with Mark Anderson of Anderson Seed and Garden, taking your calls on all things gardening, lawn, talking fruit trees earlier.
Yes. And bees.
And bees.
We're talking bees.
Bees. And finally watering the lawns for the first time. I finally mowed my lawn for the first time. I started to feel guilty. All of the other neighbors had mowed theirs.
And it was like a little shaggy.
It's like, okay, I need to do it.
Yeah.
I always say the one thing I love about this time of year is my lawn looks just as good as everybody else's lawn. It's just as green. It's just as lush. And a few months from now, I just can't say that same thing.
Not as much, not as much. So we let ours go as long as we could without watering. We got a couple spots that really kind of started to dry out. And that's where it's compacted and where it's close to the road and the driveway. And in the winter, I'm sure it got driven on multiple times. Mm-hmm. And it just isn't absorbing and holding the moisture like it ought to. So going to take some Hydratane home tonight and get things going.
Put that on top of it.
Yeah, what a big difference. And then one of my friends called the other day and he was just like, my lawn looks good, but it's just not doing quite what I want. I fertilized it just a couple weeks ago. What else can I do? And I was like, all right, let's do some humate on there because that's going to help break down your thatch. It's really going to free up the nutrients. It's going to make it available to your plants. But let's throw some Back to Green on there. Mm-hmm. And the Back to Green has some compost in there. It has a really high dose of iron, and then it has a soil penetrant like the Hydratane that will help your soil absorb and retain the moisture that we're getting better. And so when you do water, your water is much more effective. It stays there in the soil a lot longer. It pulls all that extra water down into the soil, and it will hydrate your plants up a lot better. And so we're going to do a Back to Green and a humate with it, and I think in like 10 days he'll see like a huge difference with his lawn. It'll be like dark, really dark green, and it really makes a big difference. And so between those two products, if you're thinking, hey, I've already put a fertilizer on, but the lawn's just kind of lacking a little something, the Back to Green is going to like reduce your water consumption and your water usage by up to 50% for the next 2 months. And so that's like a twice a summer type application. And if you do the Hydratane, that's really a 90-day residual, and so it's going to stick around. See, I put mine on right now. It's going to last almost until
3 months.
It's going to last almost until Labor Day, and with that, I have consistently been able to cut my water back about 30 to 40%. So that's a huge savings in how much water you're using. The plants are picking up and utilizing the water better. You just don't have to water as much, and it really keeps your plants looking great.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially the turf. Yeah, it really makes a difference on turf. But it's great for vegetables. You can use it in your vegetable garden. You don't have to like water as much in your vegetable garden. The Hydratane makes a huge difference there. And then flower beds, shrub plantings, you can really
universal.
You can really cut your water back consistently across the board in your landscape by 30 to 40%. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. So love the Hydratane.
Yeah. And phone lines are open. If you have a question for Mark, 753-5868 or 1-800-369-5868. As we go back out to the phone lines, Dan is joining us on the line from Hyde Park. Dan, welcome to the Garden Guide.
Great. Appreciate the show. I bought a box of the mic, this microhyzade, and I got an application question. So I bought a 5-apple apple and added that to the base of the rootstock.
Got one of the combo apples? Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. You guys always have amazing rootstock. Everything I put in the ground, somehow it grows. So thanks for having a great product.
Super.
My question is, where else could I use the mic? Could I use it if I'm planting strawberries is my question.
Absolutely. So the mycorrhiza is a natural fungus that coincides with host plants. So it really creates kind of a symbiotic relationship. And what it does is it goes out and finds water and it finds nutrient and it brings it back to the plant more efficiently than the plant can. So it creates this really microscopic root network that just transports water and nutrient right to its host. So once it finds a host, and it will host on trees and shrubs and flowers, vegetables, really the only things that the mic doesn't work on would be like everything that's in like the rhododendron family. So rhododendrons, azaleas, blueberries, it doesn't work on those. It doesn't work on beets or chard either, but it works on basically everything else. So you can use it on your apple tree. You could use it on any new plantings of shrubs. The strawberries would be great. We use that on the strawberries all the time. And once it colonizes the root system of its host, it will live with its host indefinitely. So as long as its host is alive, it will do everything that it can to keep its host alive. So it's super efficient at finding water and nutrient and just bringing it back to its host. The host digests that nutrient, and then it gives it back to the mycorrhiza, and the mycorrhiza goes and finds more. So it's a really amazing product that will keep your plants healthier in the long run in a very natural and normal way that's just kind of part of nature already. So very cool.
Great, thank you.
You are so welcome. So yeah, go ahead and use that on the strawberries, Dan. That would be amazing. And you want to just make sure it comes in contact with the root system. So with the trees, we usually tell people, dig your hole, put a little bit of mic down on the bottom. But when you get ready to put your root ball down in there, just make sure it gets all over the root zone of the tree, whether it's in a pot or whether it's bare root. Make sure it comes in contact with those roots, and then cover it up. And then we water it with the root stimulator. Kangaroots has more mycorrhiza in there as well too. So we like to use that because it kind of supplements the mic as well too. So that'll get you off on the right foot and hopefully make your plants grow like crazy, Dan.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark.
You are welcome. Have a wonderful weekend, Dan.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll see you. All right. Phone lines are open, 753-5868, 753-KVNU. And you're welcome to call in and join us here on The Garden Guide. Mark Anderson with my amazing producer, Will.
Hey, glad to help. And as long as you have the knowledge, I'm glad to push the buttons.
But you bring a lot of questions and input as well, too. So, it's like it's a team effort. So, exactly. but we got another caller. So.
Yeah, that's right. Part of the team. Vicky is joining us on the line from Smithfield. Vicky, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey, Vicky.
I'm just wondering, I've had the 2 apple trees for like 15 years, and one is like a Golden Delicious. I don't know what the other one is, but they haven't produced the taller one has produced like 6 apples last year. But other than that, they haven't produced hardly anything for like 10, 15 years. I was wondering if I'm doing something wrong or...
How much are you pruning each year?
Pardon?
How much are you pruning each year?
I prune them like a lot.
Okay.
Maybe too much?
Possible. There are fruit-producing spurs on the apple trees that if you prune those off, you'll prune a lot of your fruit-producing wood off of the tree, and so then it has to produce more. And once they produce those spurs will produce fruit for 5 to sometimes 10 years before they stop being productive. And so if you're pruning maybe a little bit too aggressively, you might be taking off your fruit producing spurs, and then you would not have a lot of flower production. Do they bloom a lot?
Like it's not okay if I trim the candles. You know how they get those on the top that just poke straight up?
Right. That's like your water sprouts. Yeah, those should be taken off immediately every year. So every year I take all the water shoots off, and then we go in and kind of thin things out. And if you want to come into the store, probably not today because I'm going to have like 5 people around me all day today. But middle of the week next week, come in and I would be glad to show you what parts of the tree to kind of look for and see if you're maybe pruning a little bit too aggressively. But, I mean, do they bloom in the spring? Do they bloom for you, but then they just don't set any fruit?
No, like the one, it had like 6 blossoms on it last year, and it did produce those 6 apples.
So
a little short one.
So they're just not producing.
It was loaded one year, and I've never seen anything on it since.
Yeah. So definitely feed your trees. And so I feed my trees consistently at least once a year. So every spring I will put a nice season-long fertilizer on them to encourage some growth and some production. And we didn't have very many apples last year, but they bloomed pretty well. But a lot of the blossoms got frozen. This year they're absolutely loaded, like loaded. And I pruned them fairly aggressively this spring myself. But there's certain parts of the tree that you have to identify and make sure you keep those on the tree. Otherwise, you'll cut all your fruit-producing spurs off. So we don't want to do that. And I don't.
I try to keep the middle so the light can get down into it.
Right.
And I'm pruning so that it doesn't get bogged up in the middle. Yep. And then I cut off the candles off the top all the time.
Okay. All right. So this week, come in or next week or whenever, but come in and I'd be glad to spend some time with you and say, okay, here's the parts of the tree that we can identify, and this is where the fruit's going to be produced, and make sure you're not taking those spurs off, because the spurs look like unproductive growth. They look like they should be pruned off. And so if you don't recognize those and you prune them all off, you will cut off all your fruit producers. And so that's what I'm doing. So that is a possibility. So let's make sure and fertilize, encourage some growth. Good thing is that if you've been pruning aggressively, you'll get lots of nice new growth back, and so we can get those trees producing again here within a year or 2, and all of a sudden you'll have lots of apples again. So
okay.
All right.
I was wondering too, like my leaves on both of the trees never dropped.
Last year, all the leaves last year the leaves got frozen before they changed color and dropped off the trees, and so everybody kind of dealt with that. I had the same thing in my orchard too, so no worries there. But now that the new leaves have come out, all those old leaves have fallen off, and they lots of new growth has come out. So they're looking really good.
I just went through and raked them, and they fell off.
Yep. So a little bit of fertilizer, and there's some really great options out there. The tree and shrub food, the Fertilome fruit tree food. I use the Pro Grow 365 because it's a season-long fertilizer and put on once. It'll feed them for the entire year, and you will get good production off of your fruit trees next year for sure if you start fertilizing a little bit.
So last fall you said you need to spray this, and this so you don't get fire blight, and
correct.
It snowed before I got that sprayed on them.
Yes, and so
should I spray that on them now?
There's some things we can do in the fall to prevent fire blight and shot hole fungus and bacterial bud blight. So we would use like either copper soap or the Complete Disease Control from Monterey, the new fungicide 5 from Fertilome. There's some really great fungicides that we can use in the fall as the leaves are dropping off the trees, and a lot of people didn't get that done last year because the leaves never dropped off the trees. So it was like timing was kind of messed up last year. But this year for fire blight, the trees are in bloom right now, and so now is the time to spray for fire blight. We have drier weather conditions, which is good because that's going to decrease the amount of fire blight that's spreading. And we've got nice temperatures at night. It's not too cold, not too high humidity, and so that's going to really help with our fire blight situation this year because the weather's like perfect for it to not spread. And so right now while they're in bloom, you want to spray the blossoms with the copper soap, with streptomycin sulfate. There's some options. Garden Foss, we can spray those to prevent them from getting infected in the first place with the fire blight. And then you can also treat the trunk with the Garden Foss to prevent it from inside out, from systemically we're going to use it to stop the fire blight. But we also want to spray for shot hole fungus and bacterial bud blight on stone fruits. So all your stone fruits would be cherries, apricots, peaches, plums, nectarines, and we'll do that right after the blossoms come off. And so for a lot of people, those blossoms have just finally faded and are all falling off the trees. So now is the time to spray to prevent that particular disease from getting into the trees right now. So again, same fungicide. So the Complete Disease Control fungicide 5, the copper soap would be great. The Garden Foss would be excellent to try and prevent those diseases before they start showing up on the fruit. So
mix all those together? Or
nope, you just use one or the other. Yeah. So we're not going to use all of them. You just pick one. So if you've got copper soap, that will take care of both. If you've got the Garden Foss, that really does a great job on fire blight, but not so good on the bacterial bud blight. Actually works on the bacterial bud blight, but doesn't work on the shot hole fungus as much. So the copper soap is great. The fungicide 5 from Fertilome, brand new product, very effective on bacterial as well as fungal diseases. So that would be a great option. It's a biofungicide. That's a natural one that really is super effective. So you have some really good options for the fire blight as well as for the shot hole fungus, cranium blight, bacterial bud blight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come in and get some fertilizer for them next week.
Sounds great, and I'd be glad to show you like how not how to prune, because it sounds like you're doing a great job pruning, but just which parts to recognize that are where your fruit's going to be produced, and then maybe we can get your trees get them going again. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I shouldn't be pruning all summer long, right?
Usually just if there's damage or if there's some breakage, I'll do a little bit of pruning, but otherwise I kind of do a heavy pruning in the spring and let them do their thing.
Okay.
All right. Super.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Have a great weekend.
Now, also out in Smithfield, Curtis has joined us on the line. Curtis, thanks for holding. Welcome to the Garden Guide.
You're welcome. Thanks for all the information.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Hey, I got a tree company that's going to come in and take out a very, very large 30-year-old Quakin aspen. I'm preparing to put my front lawn in drought-resistant grass, and I don't want to deal with that tree.
Sure.
So is there something I can do before they tear it out? They're going to grind the stump to keep the suckers from coming up as bad as I think they're going to come up.
They will. So once you cut that down, the root system of that tree is going to want to produce new versions of it
and seek the sunshine.
Oh, yes, exactly. So usually what most of the tree companies will do is they'll come in, they'll remove that tree for you, and then they're going to come back later and grind it out. And they usually won't do it the exact same day that they take the tree down because of exactly what you're talking about. And in the meantime, once they've cut it down, if they don't treat it, you need to treat it with a brush and stump killer. And the brush and stump killer comes ready to use. Use it just as is. And you want to put it on the first inch right next to the bark all the way around the tree. So you're not going to like cover the entire stump. We're just going to do the first inch right there where the bark is attached to the stump all the way around the exterior of that stump, and then go down the sides down to the ground. It'll absorb it in through the bark. It'll absorb it in through that fresh cut, and then it will pull it down through the root system, and it will kill all the roots out so you don't have little suckers popping up all over the place. And so then have them come and grind it out about 3 or 4 weeks later, and it will be completely dead. It'll be easier to grind out. It'll be a lot easier to remove. But if they do it the same day, you're going to have suckers popping up all over the place. And if that happens, then you can cut the suckers off where they start coming up and put the brush and stump killer on those suckers, and it will go down and kill the root system out. So you could, technically we could do it both ways.
So if I'm going to kill the whole front yard, so same thing. If those suckers come, I still can kill them.
Yes.
And then work on them from that part, right?
Yep. And the brush and stump killer comes, like I said, it's ready to use, but there's a smaller version that has like a little paintbrush on it, and it's great for doing the little suckers if you get more suckers coming up. So wherever the suckers come up, just cut them off, leave a little bit of stem above the ground, maybe 6 inches of, not 6 inches, like a half an inch of stem just above the ground, and then just put that brush and stump killer right on that fresh cut on those suckers, and it will go down in and kill that whole root system out.
Okay.
All right.
So the tree is big enough and old enough that it's probably going to come up across the road in my neighbor's yard.
It very likely could. Yeah. Lots of root system on those poplars, and they are notorious for sending up suckers all over the place once the parent plant dies for whatever cause, whether you cut it down or whether it's something else.
So it doesn't matter if they tear out the whole grind out the whole stump. I mean, below the ground level.
Right.
And the root system's still going to be alive.
It's better if you can treat it before they grind it out. But if they need to grind it out immediately, then we can still treat it when the little suckers start to come up, and you can be just as effective.
Okay.
All
right. Thanks.
Good luck. Yep. Have a great weekend, Curtis.
Yep.
All right, we got a couple minutes left.
We do. About 3.5 minutes left. And you were mentioning earlier, Mark, that a lot of new plants have come into the store, and a lot of people have been coming in. They're looking for a particular tomato. If it's not in earlier this week, chances are it might be in now.
It's coming. So we're getting trucks of deliveries almost on a daily basis. So vegetables are coming in daily. Flowers are coming in daily. Perennials are coming in twice a week. Shrubs and trees are coming in weekly, if not more frequently. I got 3 trucks this week, so almost on a weekly basis we've got new stuff coming in. So if we've tried to find a specific plant for you and we've put you on our plant list, we're looking for it. And as soon as it comes in, we'll call. So I had 3 trucks come in the last 2 days. We've called, texted, emailed probably 100 people about different stuff that has come in for them, and so we're watching for all those. Every time we see an availability list, if something pops up that somebody's looking for, it's like, oh, we'll grab that. Oh, we'll grab that. Yeah. So some beautiful shrubs coming in this week. Just got some new trees in. Got a great selection of fruit trees, like an amazing selection of fruit trees for this time of year. Usually we're like out of fruit trees already by now. So really great options on the fruit trees. Beautiful shade and flowering trees in stock. Just got an amazing selection of shrubs, flowering shrubs, evergreens. Roses are starting to bloom. They look really, really good. So if you need to replace some of your sad-looking roses, will.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to watch it and see. Give it about 2 weeks.
See what
and
happens.
see what
I got
happens.
some beautiful roses. But we're stocking the greenhouses like every single day. The only thing I can think of that we're like completely running out of would be like onion plants are about gone. We're starting to get low on strawberries. We're definitely getting low on raspberries. So some of the small fruits we've kind of burned through all those, and those are all gone. But it's time to start planting warm season crops. So tomatoes and peppers and squashes, melons, cucumbers. I got a great selection of those right now, and really great time to fertilize the lawn. If you haven't fertilized, amazing time to get weeds under control. So selling a lot of weed-free zone right now. As everybody's got dandelions.
Dandelions
like
and clover.
Yeah. Clover and dandelions all over the place, which the bees absolutely love. So if you want to keep the bees happy, don't kill your clover and your dandelions out. But seeing a lot of diseases too. So good time to prevent. So powdery mildew, there's some great options between the fungicide 5 or the copper soap. But time to prevent those diseases, and really time to start thinking about conserving water this summer as well too. Even though we have lots of water, we're going to try and get everybody in the habit of conserving a little bit more. Hydrotain, back to green, mulches, all those things will really help with water conservation, and really keep your plants looking a lot better. So it's a good time to do that. So.
Time to plant. Yep. And we hope you join us again next week for the Memorial Day edition of the Garden Guide.
Washington, when it's happening on Wall Street.
That's the reason why we're going to continue, because I believe there is a cause here.
News Talk KVNU.